Okay, Hannah, this is for you since you were nice enough to ask. And we are doing end of the frontier all the way to the election of 1892. So strap on your French beret and get ready for some excitement. Now you're not here, so you're not going to get to see the best part of this, which is pretty awesome. And I think you'd like this, except you do hate poor people and all those people who try to make the world a better place. So, you know, whatever. But here we go. Let's talk about the end of the front, or let's talk about the development on the end of the frontier. The frontier itself, oh, actually, you know what? I'm going to use some maps. As the frontier begins to close, as you know, the census of 1890 officially closed off the West with the Battle of Wounded Knee as a precursor to that. So the frontier states on the prairies, like the Dakotas, and by the way, North Dakota wants to just be called Dakota. They argue they have an no appreciable difference in temperature, neither here nor there. Wyoming, Idaho, a lot of these states become actual states. Montana, at the end of the 19th century, as all the acts of Congress and the railroads and the mines are bringing people west. So, none of those are going to bring people west are land rushes. In Oklahoma, which didn't become a state until 1907 because it was very heavily populated by Native Americans who weren't counted as citizens. They literally had land rushes. People would rush for land. And in class, we had a little thing. And if there was a line you couldn't cross, and if you crossed it, you were shot because you were a Sooner. That's what the Oklahoma Sooners are called, but you weren't here for that. And I shot Leah, and I shot... Who else did I shoot?
James.
And I shot James. It was very satisfying. And but over 100,000 Sooners eventually go in and claim land. And one of the problems with the closing off of the West is a psychological issue related to the safety valve theory, because for generations people knew that if nothing else they could go west. And it never did, most people, but if people knew there was a west out there, then they felt that there was a chance for them. But now that the West is officially closed off in the census of 1890, some paranoia begins to set in. Even though there's just tons and tons of acres for sale or pretty free land, a new chapter in American history develops because there isn't a frontier, open West. Now, in terms of farms becoming factory, we learned about, as time is going on, because of increasing agricultural development with technology, it becomes more about efficiency, and it becomes more about putting out one crop rather than a bunch of crops, rather than subsistence. So mechanization becomes important, and then for farmers, they begin to rely more on banks, and they begin to rely more on railroads, and they begin to rely more on manufacturing, which puts them in debt and leads to the farm movements that we're going to talk about. In the South, the great majority of whites in the South were tenant farmers who were on land that wasn't even theirs, or sharecroppers who were tied to the land. And this is going to become a political and definitely an economic issue that's also going to spur the populist movement, which is a glorious movement indeed. So the mechanization of the farm, making efficiency and production to be the most important thing, is changing the idea and the notion of agriculture itself from what we had known previously. Politics of the 1890s is interesting because the Speaker of the House was a guy, during Benjamin Harrison's time, was a guy named Thomas Reed, who was extremely powerful. And he presided over the first ever billion-dollar Congress because, if you remember, Republicans liked high tariffs to help out businesses. And they were bringing in so much in tariff money, and if you also remember, they were paying it out to pensioners who were loyal supporters of the GAR, right, of the Republican Party. They also liked, they didn't like bimetallism, right, having two different types of metal to be backed by the currency, or to back the currency because it created inflation. However, we're going to see two acts of Congress be passed, and they were both compromises. The Republicans gave in to the Democrats, and they passed the Sherman Silver Purchase Act. Same Sherman of the Antitrust Act, who wrote this law that increased the amount of silver being produced to hopefully allow for more inflation. However, it wasn't that much more silver on the market. If you were here, I would let you hold on to Escobar or whole milk. Escobar, by the way, Vassar, is my bunny, and whole milk is my cow. If you could tell me what other silver act put more silver on the market, nobody in first block can think of it. Not even Madeline Davis, the brilliant Madeline Davis. Do what? Now she knows it because she's quite brilliant. So the Democrats got this, and what the Republicans got in for a compromise was a tariff law. The McKinley tariff of 1890 is going to radically increase tariffs, up to 48% on foreign durable goods. And again, this is protecting big business, which the Republicans wanted. This tariff, as you know, like all tariffs, increases prices and was wildly unpopular amongst the population, and a bunch of those Republicans are voted out of office, including McKinley, who later became our president. But now comes the most important part. We're going to get to the farmer issue. So the rise of the farmers, yo, on your packet you should see. In fact, on the packet, Vassar, it says, the rise of the farmers, yo. Farmers start to organize. And as they're organized, why are they going to organize? I mean, they're farmers. I mean, it's not like they're going to strike. But what they can do is educate themselves. Why is it that farmers are being taken advantage of? Why is it that farmers are being hurt by the gold standard? All of these things. Let me see how much time I've got. Oh dear. So, the first farmer union is called the National Grange. Sometimes, it was actually the name was the National Grange of the Patrons of Husbandry. We're going to call it the National Grange, led by Oliver Kelly. And their job, and there's hundreds of thousands of them, is to set up cooperatives and to pass laws that are pro-farmer, called Granger laws. In fact, if you remember in 1877 in the court case Munn versus Illinois, which is a pro-farmer decision of the Supreme Court, those were pushed by Granger laws. Those were laws that pushed and said that the government could regulate commerce, specifically railroads, if it was in the interest of the public. That was overturned by the Wabash case, which in turn creates the need for things like the Interstate Commerce Act and the Sherman Antitrust Act. Cooperatives were also set up. So if you have all these farmers all over the place, if you got Madeline as a farmer, and Vassar as a farmer, and Hannah as a farmer, and each one of you are going to buy a tractor separately, or going to buy seed separately, you would not get as good of a deal if you worked collectively. So cooperatives were set up to do this. But here's the question, Hannah. How is it that farmers would consider the idea of coming together? How could they consider this? Because farmers by nature don't live near each other. You know why? Because they're farmers and there's lots of land. So when is the one time of the week, Vassar, that farmers are together?
Sunday.
And what's going on?
Church.
Church is going on. And after church, they're coming up with ideas on how to fix problems. And these ideas of cooperatives happen. And what do you do after church, Vassar?
Eat.
You eat! And what is it that you eat?
Food.
Specifically, Madeline, what do you eat?
Cornbread.
Cornbread! And what's the meat?
What cornbread?
Chicken! Why cornbread? Because cornbread's awesome.
Oh, okay.
And chicken, and mashed potatoes, and corn pudding, as much corn as possible. Lots of corn all over the place. And gravy, and biscuits, and tea, and green Kool-Aid. And not green Kool-Aid, but over chicken, these people are coming together to work for cooperatives. So now, instead of Vassar and Madeline and Corey going and Hannah going to get seed, we all go to the same place and buy our seed collectively because we'll get a better price. Maybe we'll use the railroads. We'll go to the railroads and say, we want a better deal on moving our product. Maybe we go to the manufacturers and say, we want a better deal. We'll buy all of our tractors from you if you give us a deal on these tractors. So using the power of numbers to get what they want. Okay? And this is going to turn into a political cause. Madeline, what's that first? What is the first political party of the farmers? Before even the populace. Look at her. She's taking a test and answering questions. The Greenback Labor Party is going to be a combination of farmers, we get the term greenback because they wanted more currency, anti-gold standard, and laborers like the Knights of Labor and labor unions. And these politicians are going to focus specifically on these farmer issues and the issues of the lower class, the issues of those without. And this is going to lead to the rise of the idea of populism. And the Greenback Labor Party elected quite a few people into Congress. The Greenback Labor Party got electoral votes. And the populist party and the populist movement is going to come out of this. We're talking about populism, we're talking about average people, usually Midwestern rural people, and average ideas. In fact, in Kansas, considered the most radical place during this era. Think about this. Kansas and northern Texas are the two most radical places in America at this time. Socialists all over Kansas. Mary Lease, a woman, was the one who said, what should we do, Madeline? What did Mary Lease ask us to do? Raise less corn and more hell. We need to raise less corn and more hell. A populist named Pitchfork Ben Tillman actually was governor of South Carolina. Tom Watson, governor of Georgia. Another one, my favorite, Sockless Jerry Simpson, was another candidate who ran successfully and was calling for change. And this is going to surround itself with farmer alliances. And farmer alliances are going to be all over the country. In the South, in the Midwest, the Great Plains, even African Americans are going to have colored farmer alliances. And this will be important in organizing farmers because organizing is tough. And all of this leads to the populist party, sometimes known as the People's Party. Mary loves the People's Party. And in 1892, during the election, James Weaver is going to be the presidential candidate, vice presidential candidate of Tom Watson. And they're going to run, getting 22 electoral votes. They had governors, senators, congressmen, 1,500 elected officials between local, state, and national officials. And they met in Omaha in the 1892 election. In the 1892 election, Grover Cleveland was the Democrat who was running again, versus the Republican sitting president, Benjamin Harrison, and then our populist friends. And the Omaha platform is going to be the platform on which the populists are going to put everything down on. And the populist platform, the Omaha platform, is going to, essentially, all of it will get passed eventually, but not during the populist era. And I'm going really fast because I want to get this online, but free and unlimited coinage. They want as much silver on the market as they can get. A 16-to-1 ratio, tons and tons of silver to allow for more inflation because it was better for debtors. They wanted an income tax on the wealthy. They said the wealthy were getting rich off of them, the banks, the manufacturers, the railroad companies. They wanted an income tax to tax the rich to help out the farmers. They wanted more government regulation. In fact, they wanted the government to own the railroad companies. Own them. That's socialism. They wanted an 8-hour workday. They wanted direct election of senators. They wanted referendum and initiative. Referendum is voting directly on an issue. Their two biggest things the populists are pushing for in a broad sense are economic regulations, more government involvement, and more democracy. Average people getting involved more. They wanted postal savings banks, places they could put their money instead of wildcat banks. It was safe. And while none of this really got done while they were pushing for this, and they won quite a few, like I said, offices, the problem though, and the reason why the populists ended up not actually winning an election or winning more, was because of the race in the South. White people in the South, the average poor white farmers, would not tear themselves away from the Democratic Party because of its relationship with white supremacy. And race will once again rear its ugly head, racism will, and these farmers in the South, these white farmers and black farmers have a lot in common in terms of who is taking advantage of them, but the racial divide keeps the whites voting towards Democrats and the African Americans, if they were allowed to vote, for the populists, oftentimes for the Republicans even. And because this split vote happened in the South, the populists were unable to gain a lasting impression on American politics. But it's going to lead into the progressive movement, and we're going to see the populists come around one more time in 1896, which we're going to get to tomorrow. But this went really fast. There were no questions. I hope you got it. If you need anything, ask tomorrow.